Come join us each week as we dive into topics about the joys and the struggles of motherhood. By no means are we experts. We're practically flying by the seat of our pants, or should I say, mom jeans. On this podcast, you will find a judgment-free zone where we discuss not only the best parts of being a mom, but the not-so-glamorous parts too. You can expect unfiltered, real mom talk, humor, grace, and a sense of sisterhood. What makes our podcast unique is that we understand there's no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to being a mother. We're not going to pretend that we know everything too, because we definitely don't. We just want a place to share our stories with you. Thank you so much for tuning in to Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood. Wednesday nights are like training, apparently, for their new helicopter. They just love it. They're flying hours. I cannot wait to not live on a military base anymore. It's like living at camp. 7:30, you have a melody in the morning, the do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do. And then national anthem at 4:30. And if you're outside, you have to stop and put your hand over your heart. Or if you're in your car, you have to stop. And then at 10, it's the taps, the really sad song they play at like funerals.
How much longer do you guys have?
Yeah, every day. Well, it just depends. Hopefully, if Ryan can get like a 6-month internship, we might be out of here February next year. But if he doesn't, like if it's 3 months, it'll be a little later. Or if he didn't get one at all, like July of next year. So anywhere between February and July, we'll be out. And hopefully in Arizona.
Woo!
So, yeah. I'm excited. Okay.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Well, welcome back to another episode of Mom Jeans. We're so excited to have you here. And if you would do us a favor, if you'd hit that little option button and give us 5 stars, that's going to help other mothers out there to find us, and we would love that. So last week we had Leah tell us about her birth story, and this week Michelle's going to tell us about her story, and we have a special guest with us in a little bit, Ryan, her husband. So we're excited to hear their story. Before we get started, though, we're going to have our weekly check-in and see how everybody's doing this week. Leah, would you like to start us off today?
So we were at the pediatrician earlier today. Wesson has had a cough for the last couple days, and it got significantly worse yesterday. And so we were a little concerned, and he was doing he would cough and then he would go like he was having a hard time catching his breath and recovering from the cough. And so we took him in today, and the doctor gave him a steroid to help with his breathing. And I didn't actually catch this, so I'm glad that Stephen was really with me at the time, but the pediatrician said, at this stage, they said he has croup, but it's not contagious. He's fine to go back to school. It's not a super big deal. But he said, day 4 and day 5 is the worst, and the time that we need to be the most scared is what the pediatrician said to us today. And I didn't hear that. And Stephen was like, I don't understand why he would say that.
He said the same exact thing to us. He said the same exact thing to us for when Aubrey had RSV. Rest assured, he says that to everybody.
This was my first time meeting him today.
We've had him for multiple diagnoses of RSV, of all the things, and he says that every single time. And I freaked out the first time. He said it the second time, and I was like, huh. And I had him again, and I was like, okay, buddy. Yep. So just kind of rest assured there. He says that every time.
It's such a weird thing to say. I don't know. So I thought that was bizarre. But kind of makes me feel a little bit better hearing that is just his go-to. But the steroid that they gave Wesson was a chocolate-flavored liquid type thing. And the nurse was like, oh, the kids love this. It's chocolate. They love it. Not Wesson. I mean, you would have thought that he was, I don't know, getting his toenails picked off or something one by one. He was absolutely losing it. And the nurse was like, come on, buddy. It's better than the shot. And I'm standing in the corner tearing up listening to Weston cry. And I'm like, at this point, I'm like, I think the shot would have been better. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, he
Would have been
did
over with
not
at this
take to
point.
it. He did not like it one bit. And I think he's the first kid in the history of kids to not like it based off of the nurse's reaction. So,
Has he had chocolate before? Like chocolate flavored things?
no, he loves vegetables.
Hannah had chocolate for the first time and hated it. Hated
Really?
the chocolate. Yes, because we don't expose them to that stuff because we're hippies.
That's what my dad calls me.
Stephen was like, man, if you put it in an avocado, he would have taken it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, make it broccoli flavored.
Banana for us.
Strawberry for us.
So yeah,
Also, why have they not done that for pet medication yet? We have to give our dog pills twice a day, and we have to shove it down his throat because that's the only way that he'll take it. I'm like, can you just coat it in like chicken grease
Yeah.
or something?
do you ever put it in
So that the dogs
cheese?
will eat it.
Okay.
Oh, we've tried
The
everything.
pill pockets, all the things. Yeah.
Trigger will
All
take
the
it in
things.
Velveeta,
Yeah.
but that's it.
No. He knows that he gets a treat afterwards, so he gets really excited about that. But the pill administration is just whoop, just shoving it right down the
Okay.
back of his throat. Anyway,
So
Well, is
he
Weston
coughed
feeling
less
better?
this afternoon after the steroid, so hopefully it helped. I haven't really heard him since we've been on the call, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing with him is that he doesn't really react when he's not feeling well. Like he's still his normal self and he's still laughing. The only difference is maybe there's a few more cuddles, but not much. And so I think that's why it's just like hard to tell if anything is really wrong with him. But yesterday when I picked him up from school, like you could hear the cough was a little bit worse and his breathing was seemed to be a little bit more challenged, but he seems fine. So I think the goal is to take him back to school tomorrow. And yeah, hopefully, I ran into Michelle yesterday at Sprouts, like right after I picked up Weston, and I was like, dude, he's not feeling good. You guys aren't feeling good. Like they say summer is supposedly better, but then I think back to last summer and Weston was sick for 6 weeks straight last summer. So I'm like, do we get a break? The doctor today was like, yeah, there's like 4 days during the summer that are good. The rest of them, it's, it never ends.
The funny thing is doctor will also tell you that they're never contagious. He told me to take them to school every single time. And I'm like, okay, so they got it somehow, right? So how are they not contagious? Okay, off my soapbox.
Well, I asked, I was like, so what's the deal with like daycare and going back? And he was like, oh, you can take him back today. It's fine. I was like, maybe we'll just like keep him home today. So interesting. This is the first time I've met that doctor.
He ends up on calls a lot, just so you know. He'll end up on day of calls and like not scheduled appointment calls. So if you go in for sicknesses, you'll get him a decent amount.
Good to know.
Well, I guess to segue to me, because I've this week I'll talk less about Sierra and more about myself. My cough from last week went awry and got worse. I slept in our guest room most nights. Preview to my birth story is my pelvic floor is still not fully repaired. So coughing this much has been really frustrating, I guess. Some leaking has been going on, which is just annoying in that sense. So I'm 18 weeks and 5 days pregnant today, which is exciting, which means I'm like a week and a half from being halfway through it, which is just nuts. Baby boy is the size of a Kodak disposable camera, which is cool, or a stapler. So getting bigger all the time. And we have a lot of excitement about the 20-week appointment. But, being so sick was just so hard. I was, texting my doulas, and I have a family friend that's an OB, and then Lisa and Leah, just like this anxiety of taking medication. And also, I ended up went to urgent care and got my lungs checked because I have a history of it turning into pneumonia pretty quickly. And luckily it hadn't turned yet, but it was like on track to do that. So I got put on an antibiotic this weekend, and, the OB really reassured me. And she's like, we wouldn't tell you to take this if it wasn't tested over and over and over again. You were doing your your body and your baby more harm by not healing than actually and then healing, right? Than taking the medicine. Like she's like, either way, you're not doing your baby harm with the coughing or things to that effect. And so it just was a moment to be like, this is what medicine's for. This is, the importance of it. And I was just struggling so much, couldn't get through the night. And so it took about 3 days for those antibiotics to really kick in, but I'm feeling so much better today. And I'm hoping to see continuous progress over the next couple of days. So,
Yay.
It was a interesting week of being really at pretty bad sicknesses, but moving forward. And, Sierra's having a good week. That's been good. She made it all the way through the night last night. And so we're making moves the right direction.
Still feeling like you're seeing some continued progress and benefit from being dairy free?
Yes. And I was like, do I open this can of worms too? Except we've gotten a little more diarrhea. So we're trying to figure out what's going on there. We're actually lightly testing a gluten intolerance as well. Dairy healed it up almost completely. And I don't want to, just keep jumping to this, but it's like, we're trying to just kind of do some testing right now and see what's going to make her better. Cause it was like, everything was really good, but then kind of regressed a little bit. Some of her eczema came back. Her stool got a little looser again. So it's like, did we accidentally slip in dairy to her diet, or is there another factor in there too? So we're so much better, like night and day better from where we were, but we're like still trying to figure out that last 10%.
So are you going to do, so you're trying out gluten, eliminating gluten. What had you been giving her previously that had gluten in it?
Noodles was like in bread sometimes. So, and those are really easy replacements. So it's like, it wasn't too much, but it's just I think a next natural thing to try. But so it's just, we were giving her some like a dairy-free mac and cheese. And then, in the morning, we'd sometimes do like toast with a little peanut butter or something like that.
And what about eggs? Have you guys thought about that at all?
Yeah, that's another one to try for sure. When I was looking at the allergen reactions, though, it seemed like gluten and dairy had more similar reactions to what she is having with the GI stuff. But we might also reconnect with our GI specialist down in Phoenix virtually and just get his opinion on which way to head from there.
It's tough because it's such a long process.
It is. But the gluten's an easy one to just eliminate. We're already 36 hours into it, and like it hasn't even been a hiccup. So anyways, appreciate you asking, and we're moving the right direction, just trying to figure out that last 10%.
I guess I'll talk about my week. Not sure that I have anything too exciting to report. I'm home, which is nice. My husband apparently has made waves with this friend group by asking a really important question to our friends. This week he was away for a work conference down in Phoenix and wanted to take advantage of the nice weather and sit by the pool, but his dilemma was how to apply his sunscreen to areas he couldn't reach by himself. So he polled all of our friends to get their input on ideas to apply sunscreen. I will say it's a pretty creative group. For anybody that's curious, his solution was to squirt sunscreen all over the wall of the shower and then rub his back on it. So
very Bryce fashion.
Yeah.
Disclaimer.
That doesn't surprise me.
Mikella's husband is very, very smart. Creative on his own. Yes. So this just was hilarious.
It worked. So I think that's the highlight of my week.
Was it his suggestion or was it one of the other guys? Do you know?
We talked about it before he went down to Phoenix, and we talked about it before he polled everybody else. And that, I think he had already thought that would be an option. So my suggestion was to put sunscreen on one of the long loofahs, to like clean the middle of your back. Sounds like somebody recommended something similar, but with a paintbrush or like an actual sunscreen applicator. So, there's options out there. But I will say probably my favorite recommendation is from Michelle's husband to call room service and have them do it.
Tip $5.
So was spray sunscreen not an option?
No, he doesn't feel like he gets good enough. We live in the mountains, people. We're 7,000 feet. We don't get out in the sun very often, and we're white, so we burn easy. The spray sunscreen just doesn't seem to do enough for preventing sunburns for his fair skin. And he feels like it's bad for the environment. So there's also that part. Because again, we're hippies.
We are. I just want to say, because your husband and my husband are brothers, and Bryce burns and Ryan burns, but he also looks Romanian when he like gets in the sun. Like they're the same, but they don't tan the same.
No,
It's kind of funny.
they do not. Yeah, Ryan tans, Bryce burns. But very proud of him for wearing sunscreen. He even was kind enough to offer it to the CEO of the company that we work for.
Not his
so-
approach, just the actual sunscreen.
Just the actual sunscreen. Yes.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
That is a really important question to ask. No, just the sunscreen itself. I don't think there was any offer of application in any way, shape, or form. Just the actual product. So there's a little glimpse into my life. Danielle, how about you? Did Ryan do anything fun this week that's worth sharing, or Weston?
Not really. No, my week wasn't very eventful. We were trying to recoup from Hawaii because the time difference, it's 4 hours now that there was a time change. And so just trying to get back on schedule, but nothing like super eventful. There was another accident with Weston, I swear. So he's walking now. So we walked out to the mailbox and we came back, and then we were going to go for an actual walk. I was going to push him in the stroller after that. And he was standing right next to me, and the gate that blocks him from getting to the stairs down our hallway is usually closed. And I left it open because we were literally right about to go back outside, and I opened up a piece of mail, and within seconds he'd already walked off and tried to go up the steps, and I heard smack. I don't think he went far. I think he went up a couple steps and fell. And I ran in there, and he's like laying down, and it's great. Like this mom fell of the day of the week, and I felt terrible. And he was bleeding. He like cut his tooth because he's got a bunch of front teeth, and it cut his lip, and bleeding a lot. And I gave him some water, and I was trying to wipe it off, and he cried again for only like 30 seconds. And then he saw the avocado, and he pointed and went, and then he wanted to hold the avocado and look at it, and he was fine after that. But I felt terrible. And of course, I told Ryan when he got home, and he's like, if that was me, you would have been so mad. Like, he wasn't mad or anything, but I'm like, you're right. And it was just, it happened in an instant. So close your baby gates. No matter if it's going to be a second, shut them. But he's just so quick now. And yeah, so that scared me a little. But he was okay and happy for the rest of the day. I did look at it this morning because I couldn't tell if it was his tongue or his lip. But then this morning when I lifted up his lip, I could see he had cut it from his tooth. So that makes me feel really sad. But I just want to let people know that accidents happen. Mm-hmm. But also close your baby gate if you're going to go back outside in a couple seconds.
So resilient, right? Like,
I know.
He's like cried it off, and then he got his avocado, and he's like, I'm good to go.
He did, yeah. But the cute thing he's doing this week is he's pointing at everything, and he goes, and like just points. And so I'm telling him what it is. And so he's like excited about new things, and he gets excited when he recognizes things. Mm-hmm. Kind of like some of his flashcards he has, like if it's a dog or a cat, he's like, oh, like I know that we have a dog or a cat.
Awesome.
So yeah,
that was one of my favorite stages for Hannah, was when she started to recognize things like that. Like she's starting to comprehend those kinds of things. Like it just clicks in them one day, and you're like, whoa, that's crazy. You're like, yeah, go get your shoe, and they go and get their shoe, and you're like, wow, that is the coolest thing. Yeah, it's really, really fun.
It is.
Wesson was trying to put his little shoes on the other day, and it was really cute. And I actually said something to his teacher. I was like, yeah, I noticed this morning, like I had his shoes with me, and he took them out of my hand, and he was trying, like he wasn't anywhere close, but he knew where they belonged, and he was going for it. And she said that they actually try and work on that every day at school, because they take off their shoes and their booties for lunch, and then they put them back on, and they like give them to work on it. I was like,
I love that.
What? It's clicking, it's registering. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That's really cool.
Weston's done that with this sock, where he'll like pick it up, but he drops it on his foot. Like it's just gonna automatically like go on his foot, but he knows that's where it goes. I'm like, that's so cute.
Yeah, I was gonna say, on that note, we found out yesterday that Aubrey got into the same Montessori school as Sierra and Wesson, so we're super excited. She'll start there not for a while, not until August, but as Michelle knows, August should come fast. You're going to have another baby by then. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. So we're super, super excited about that. That was like a shocking email. We thought there was no way we were getting in there. So we were really, really excited. Yeah. Brandon sent me a text on my way home from somewhere yesterday and was like, did you see your email? And I was like, are we getting millions back on our taxes? And he was like, no, but you might like this better. And I was like, the millions? I don't know. But I was very excited. So yeah, so that's good. Aubrey unfortunately is battling cradle cap really badly right now. So it's really, really irritating and agitating to her. And it just breaks my heart because she just tries to scratch at her head all day long. And it's just like, oh, what do we do for you? Hannah had cradle cap, but wasn't bothered by it. So we've been throwing a lot at her. And I think it's just maybe too much. And my kids both have very sensitive skin. So anything that we're giving them probably is irritating them a lot, and it's really hard. So we all got sick this weekend, similar to what Michelle had. Hannah is still coughing a little bit, but she's getting through it. And Aubrey's, I think, taking the worst of it right now, unfortunately. So that's really hard to watch her suffer because she has her little glassed over eyes and it just looks miserable. It just makes you so sad. Yeah, and we realized after reading some articles recently that we think that Hannah's been having some night terrors. So we are trying to figure out how to navigate through that and what to do to try and help her. And, everything is like, she's not getting enough sleep. She's sleeping too much. And so you're like, oh, okay, great. That's helpful. So we're trying to figure out how to get through that. And the reason we know they're night terrors is because we go in there when she's just wailing and she doesn't see us. You can talk to her. She doesn't understand you're there. She can't comprehend anything. And you just kind of sit there and wait and see if she comes to or if she goes back down. Most of the time she'll wail for about five straight minutes in your face. And you're like, how does she not see me? How does she not know what's going on? It's really hard because you're like, man, what do we do? What do we do? But they say, don't wake them, don't touch them. Just let them kind of work through it themselves. So we've been trying. It was really funny. Last night I was in putting Aubrey down and all I could hear was Hannah running. And I was like, what is happening? And Brandon's like, she just like went crazy and just started running from her window to her door, window to door, window to door. And then she kept saying, Hannah's so fast. Hannah's so fast. And I was like, she's so funny. Like the things she says that comes out of her mouth, you're like, what? But she didn't have a night terror last night. So I was like, maybe we need to just make her run like as much as possible. So yeah. So it's interesting,
In everything that you've read, did you see anything about them growing out of it?
Yes. But that's another thing that was like varying, and like most kids will grow out of it by the time they're 6. I'm like, 6? Oh my gosh, we got to wait another 4 years for that. That would be rough. But I know like my brother had them for a long time. And then when he grew out of them, then he became an extreme sleepwalker where like there were like padlocks on all of my parents' doors because he would end up outside. Like, okay, well, we don't want that either, obviously. But yeah, it's kind of crazy what all these different things that you never thought of happening. So yeah, so I told Leah, I think I read a really cool thing while we're battling through toddler stage right now. And it had to do with treating your child like the best boss you ever had. Like the best boss you ever had wasn't screaming at you when you did something wrong, and it wasn't making you feel guilty and making you work so hard and fix, all those things. And if you did something good, they were there to praise you. So it was very interesting to try to approach parenting like that today with Hannah. And it was really like, I liked that approach. So I thought that was cool. Anyway, that's us.
Well, we have a special guest. I know Danielle kind of already gave it away, but Michelle, let's kick it off. You're here to tell your story today, and you're not alone.
Introducing my husband, Ryan, to help tell my birth story. Birth stories are crazy because you barely remember anything, but I think you remember everything quite vividly.
I still remember it every day.
So, well, we haven't practiced, but we're going to sort of co-tell the story of Sierra's birth. Should we dive in?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I actually so Sierra was born on March 8th. But on March 29th, I wrote down the whole birth story so I'd remember it. So I was rereading it today for the first time really since her birth, and it triggered a lot of new memories. But I think just some of the facts out of the way. Her due date was the 3rd. She was born on the 8th, so she was 5 days late. The last couple weeks for me were just grueling. I think I talked about that in the 3rd trimester episode. It just, this mental anguish of when is the baby gonna come. I think the reality is most babies come late. On the first babies come late. Not all of us had that experience. Some of us did. But yeah, so she was 5 days late. I, like everyone was talking about, we ideally would like to go into labor naturally. So I, after four days or so, I started texting my doulas, asking for tips because we had an induction date scheduled. And I ended up using primrose oil, and it was a doula technique to poke a hole in it with the needle and put it up in your vagina. It's supposed to help open your cervix. So I did that. I guess it was Tuesday night. I don't know what day it was, whatever, a couple days before. And then the day I ended up going to labor, I actually went to an induction focused acupuncture session, which someone in town just does acupuncture for you. But then wherever she was like, do you want to go into labor? And I was like, yeah, it's time. She's like, all right, we're going to make it happen. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about acupuncture sometimes, but sure enough, long story short, I got acupuncture at 1 p.m. and by 5:30, I started having labor contractions. And so it was, I don't know, causation does not always mean correlation, but there was directional evidence that it was working. So
was that the only time that you had gotten acupuncture during your pregnancy?
I had a lot of lower back pain, so I did quite a bit of acupuncture for my lower back, and that was helpful. But that was the only, induction.
And when did
session.
you say you were scheduled to be induced? What was the date that you were scheduled?
I think the 9th. So she was born on the 8th. Okay. So it would have been the next morning.
And Michelle, you said you started having labor contractions shortly thereafter, just a couple hours. Did you know right away that you were having labor contractions?
Well, yeah, good question. So, I'd been texting the group here, right? Like a couple days before I started having, I swear they weren't Braxton Hicks. They were contractions. It would be every 4 to 5 minutes, but it would only last 3 hours. So, thank goodness for the doulas. We would have gone to the hospital twice, but 3 times, but they were heavy contractions. And the contractions that came on the day I went into labor felt very similar. The biggest difference was we were on a walk, and it didn't actually happen, but I swear my water broke. It turns out it was a high leak. So yes, I was losing fluid, but my water didn't break like in the movies. But I was on the other side of the street, and I was like, Ryan, it feels like I just peed my pants. And, I was like, I think my water just broke. So, and then sure enough, that was at 4 o'clock. And then by 5:30, it was full blown contractions that were super painful. My mom happened to be in town. Well, she was going to be in town anyway. She's like, I'll just work remote until the baby comes. And that way I'm on call if you need. So we were Ryan was making her steak and sweet potato and gnocchi. We had this whole dinner planned. And, in between cooking, the contractions really started. So we started, and mine were so intense from the beginning and very quick apart, right? Ryan had the app going with his hand, with his one hand trying to apply counter pressure. And it was wild. They were already 5 minutes, 4 minutes apart, lasting a whole minute. And they tell you the 411 rule is when you're there, you should go to the hospital. I don't know. What was your experience laboring at home with me for, I think we did it from 5 to 11 p.m. So it was a chunk of time.
Completely freaked out. As all first time parents, oh my God, is this it? And trying to not get too excited or over anxious. Oh my God, this is it. but staying level-headed for Michelle, and also for her mom who was there, who was great, but some parents could add even more pressure in that situation. So I just tried to be calm and use this app and be like, oh my God, I hope this app is right.
Yeah.
And call our doulas, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Big advocate for doulas. They've seen hundreds of births. We've seen 0. Well, now 1.
Yeah.
And they were like just a huge piece of that puzzle that night and kind of giving us guidance.
Yeah.
At any point were you ever worried about Michelle? Like seeing her go through the contractions and with how intense they were?
Yes.
Was there ever part of you that was like, oh my
so
gosh?
worried about Michelle. Like every day, all day, yes.
Oh my gosh.
But with contractions, it's like I know myself and how I can handle like pain and, you know, like injuries and stuff. That's the only thing I could equate it to. I'm like, I think my partner is very strong. I know my partner is very strong, but this is like the most intense thing a person can go through. So it's like, I know you're a badass, but I hope this isn't too much for you. So yes, there's a little bit of worry there.
And I would think maybe as we get to like when Sierra's actually the last 3 hours of pushing, that was probably more scary, but we'll get to that. And so, you know, at that point, it's like 11 p.m. My mom is sitting there being like, she's like all supportive, but she's like, I think you should go to the hospital. Like, I think it's time. Like, these are really intense. You should probably go to the hospital. And our doulas were like, I think you're close, but like, if you want to continue to labor at home, we'll come over to your house. We have, you know, you have the ball there. We can spend more time with you there. And I think Ryan and I were kind of like, we're so anxious to get this party started, right? Like it's 11 p.m. We want to get checked into the, I almost said hotel because we said that a couple times. Wanted to get checked into the room, get settled, you know, start like, you know, nesting into our new space before we actually go about it. Cause they're like, it's only going to get later. You know, I don't want to feel rushed. So we ended up going to the hospital around 11 and we got checked in. One fun fact about the night we got checked in. So we got there at like called 11:30. And at midnight that night, they removed the mask mandate. So like there was like this uproar celebration that like people, you know, didn't have to have the mask on.
Masks on.
Yeah. So that was kind of an interesting momentous moment of that night. And so anyways, turns out they were like, your water didn't break. We think you have a leak. That's why some of the fluid's coming out. And you're 3 centimeters dilated. So we're going to get you checked in.
Is that normal to have a leak? Like, is that a thing?
Yeah. So water break, we should look up the actual data, but like having your water break before you go into labor is actually a very low percentage. All the movies show it, but I want to say it's like 10 to 15%. Maybe someone could Google in the back here. So, and then even the leaks I think are pretty rare too, but like as you start getting into it, it can
Google
start
says it's
happening
15% of women have their membranes rupture at all before labor begins.
Yeah.
Does that include when the doctor actually goes and ruptures them?
So
though?
it says the other 85% may experience their water breaking during labor, delivery, or even preterm.
I was going to say, as a dude, like the only thought I had about that was movies. And so I was fully expecting like Waterfall Michelle to hit us.
Yeah.
And then it was time to go, but apparently it's not like that.
Yeah.
So I feel like an idiot.
No, don't feel like we're all going through this like the first time. I don't even know what to expect. So we get checked in the hotel. Why do I keep saying that? The hospital room. And, you know, it's probably about midnight at this point. And, you know, the doula, so I was a very flexible in my birth plan, but my mentality going into it was healthy baby, healthy mom, step 1, whatever that takes. But I was going to attempt natural birth if possible, you know, not sure what my body could take, and ideally a vaginal delivery. So that was really my only thing. And my last one was, which I was pretty adamant about, I wanted to be as mobile as possible, as long as possible. So, you know, one of the options sometimes you get given when you get into the hospital is they, you know, will find your vein, and then sometimes they hook you up to liquids right away. And then other times they want to have it, you know, a monitor on the baby, you know, that kind of locks you into the bed. So I was, you know, we were really fortunate. Sierra was doing okay. And, you know, I didn't need that extra liquids at that point. So I had the opportunity to be pretty mobile. So they call it I can't remember what they call it, but they put it in your vein. So it's like ready to go. So the saline lock, I want to say it is, they put it in there. So it's ready to go if they need it, but I could be really mobile with it. And then I guess before we keep going, I just wanted to Danielle, I finally got to listen to your story. I couldn't be on it. Leah, Lisa, all the people listening to it. The story of my labor it was a hard labor, as you'll come to hear, but it was luckily never that scary. It was never, my health nor Sierra's risk or health was ever too much of a question. And that is just, it doesn't change what mine was or what anyone else's was, but I just want to echo that what y'all went through was crazy and intense and beautiful and powerful, and everybody's birth story in their own way is that. So just wanted to pause before we kept going and preface that we had been hard but not a scary labor, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's definitely scary for everybody in the moment at that time. So,
Totally.
yeah.
Especially being your first.
Yeah.
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 So all those feelings you're having, very valid. It's so scary.
Yeah. And I would describe it as physically traumatic, right? And I'll get into all the long-term effects of it, but it's so anyways, let's just go into it. So midnight, and our doula had a lot of techniques for different birthing positions. So, time is a time warp at that point. So between basically midnight and 6 a.m., we are doing every position possible. Ryan doing counter pressure, and mine were so painful. My contractions, it was just painful from the beginning. They weren't cute at any means. We actually did a whole lap around the hospital, and every time I had a contraction, I would pause in a different, there was this position that the doula wanted me to lift my belly a little bit and have it. So I have some really interesting pictures of me birthing on the parking structure wall and, did laps around this area to try to get the baby moving. And, at this point, Ryan's working so hard. His back is hurting from, shoveling snow. And so what was it like doing all the counter pressure?
I mean, it wasn't easy, but the whole time I'm just sitting there what could I literally complain about to Michelle right now?
Right.
But so I am in no way, shape, or form going to say anything about how my back hurts or anything else compared to Michelle.
Yeah. But, having the 3 people with such a long labor was really helpful. You actually, when we did the laps around the hospital, you actually got a little rest, which I think was important. And then anyways, so 6 a.m. rolls around and they're like, okay, we're going to do a cervical check on you to see how things are going. And it had been essentially 12 hours of contractions at this point and really hard, trying to get the baby moving. And I was no more centimeters dilated. I was still 3 centimeters. And it was, they tried it, they're trying to be whatever this data tells us, it's helpful, but it's not really, doesn't tell us much, right? Don't be deflated by it, but we just need to get a status check of where you're at. But sometimes you can go 3 to 10 so quickly. Sometimes, 3 to 10 very slowly. It's just so hard to know what's going to actually happen. So, but sure enough, 3 centimeters, 12 hours later, my body was just exhausted. And I remember we ended up going to labor on the toilet for a while. It was a really comfy position. And I started crying because I'm just feeling so exhausted. And we were starting to think about what's next in terms of options. And I'm just felt like she was never coming out. And it was just this tone. And, one of the options was we could go try to labor in the bathtub for a while, but sometimes that can either help or it can slow things down. And at this point, I'm just really trying to, I wanted to get things moving. So we had a discussion with the OB and Ryan and the doulas, and we decided to start Pitocin. And if we did Pitocin, that also meant epidural.
Did you get any rest during that time, either one of you?
Great question.
Yeah. Not at that time, but we did end up getting the epidural, and then we got to sleep for 2 hours.
Oh, that's good.
In those, whatever it was, 12 hours, getting Michelle to that point that she got to, and just looking at her and having a real come to Jesus moment of we have this birth plan for you to like deliver naturally, and like there's no shame in, you know, having an epidural, getting pitocin. Like it didn't work out exactly how you scripted it, but if this is going to help you deliver this baby still naturally and like a lot easier for you, that was like our turning point. Well, that was Michelle's turning point of like, okay, I can adapt and try something different than what I originally planned. And that was like 6 a.m. after just excruciating pain for what felt like forever. And then once she got the epidural, it was like everybody hit the reset button. We each got like 3 hours of sleep, and just waking up feeling, I mean, not $1,000,000, but I felt a lot better.
I did not feel
And it
$1,000,000,
was
but yeah.
like
Like
just
at least $20.
from my perspective,
Yeah.
yeah, like Michelle's the strongest person I've ever met, but just like seeing in her face, she just had like nothing more to give
Mhm.
at that moment. And it's like, you don't want to do damage to yourself. And like, if there's a way to help you out and save your strength and do this the rest of the day, then
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah. I was going to say, like, I was never against an epidural in the first place. Like, I mean, I just, you know, really wanted to see what my body could handle and was capable of, I guess. And also if it was possible. I've known so many friends who've done, some friends who've done naturally home births, etc. So it's like, is this possible? And throughout birth, I think I've talked about this before. Like, I just think about all women in all of history who've given birth, and I'm like just amazed that one, our humanity exists, and everyone's like, this is a great idea, because it was just like, and I do think I have a pretty high pain tolerance, but like the pain of these contractions were just out of this world. And so, you know, it was started to become an easy no-brainer to be like, all right, I need this for my own pain management.
So you said you got Pitocin and then that meant epidural. Can you tell me why? Because I got Pitocin as well. And so it's a very different experience. So I'm just curious on that aspect.
Yeah. And so we ended up, the thought about doing Pitocin and the epidural was usually your contractions get a lot more painful with Pitocin because they're going to be more strong, more triggered. And the idea is it just to accelerate them more. And I was like, I can't handle much more pain, right? Like, and so I was like, and at that point of 12 hours of doing this, I was like, this is outrageous. So that's where the epidural became important.
So that was a choice that you made together.
Yeah, my choice was to do them together.
Okay,
I could have
that
done
makes sense.
Pitocin. Yeah.
Because Leah, your contractions weren't that painful, right? So maybe that's part of the reason why it didn't feel like the epidural was as necessary when you got the Pitocin.
Yeah, no, I mean, my experience was wildly different, and not even to compare in any way, shape, or form. I didn't feel my contractions at all. I was measuring full contractions, but I didn't feel them. So it's a very different experience. I was just wondering if it was the doctor's recommendation for you, or if it was something that you had worked through, like where you got to, why the two went together, like right away.
Yeah.
And that makes sense.
So yeah, I think it was, you don't have to, but this is why we recommend them together. So we did that. An important data point about the birth story is the anesthesiologist could not get the epidural in my spinal column very easily. So he ended up, I think, poking 3 different times, which becomes important later on because I ended up having really bad like ramifications from it. But anyways, he finally got it in. Pitocin was moving. We slept for a couple hours. And I think I have like, it was about 11 a.m. or noon when, to Ryan's point, like we had a whole new shift change. The sun was up. The energy just was so much better. And everyone's like, we're going to get this baby out by 2:00. And I was like, yes, we can do this. I was like, I can work really hard for a couple more hours and to get this baby out. And so I think they measured me at some point at around 5 centimeters, but they were like, babies, I forget all the details. Like, I don't know where she was, but long story short, they were like, we want you to start pushing, even though you're not fully dilated yet, but to get the baby in a better position. And so that was, according to the math, and I was bringing back to the doula, like it was with the doula, it's about 3 hours of we push for 3 hours of kind of, we use more doula pushing techniques, like some of the breathing techniques and like really trying to like help the baby move through. And so we did that for, it was a long, long time, about 3 hours of that.
Mhm.
And, at that point I finally dilated, I think to 9 or 10 centimeters, which was really exciting, but we're looking at like 2 p.m. at this point, 3 p.m. Again, times of vortex. But my epidural had worn off basically. So we had to, I kept hitting like, there's a red button. It's like, if you want another boost of drugs, and that was doing nothing. And so we come to learn that like there was like a shortage. They only gave me a half dose anyways, but he re-upped it to like the normal dosage. And then we took like about an hour break maybe again. And then when we were about 9 or 10, they're like, okay, now it's really time to start pushing. And so we were pushing, and my body was just so beat, but I was giving it everything I possibly could. The OB came in, they're like, I actually think I know you can get this baby out vaginally, right? Like everything is showing that it's going to, this is going to take work. We're going to be able to get her out. And so we pushed for about, and I knew that OB had to take a break from 5 to 6 p.m. So she's like, we're going to get this baby out. Let's just say it's like 3 p.m. at this point. No, 4 p.m. She's like, we're going to get this baby out before I have to go to this meeting. We're just going to work really hard. And
this was not our OB. It was the OB on call. We heard stories of her being a little intense. And I don't know if you've talked about your OB before, but through 9 months, we only met her like twice.
Yeah.
So this OB was just, it turned out to be the OB that Michelle needed. And
she had the energy that I wanted and I needed, but I didn't know. She's like this little firecracker, muscly woman. And she was like, we're gonna get her out. So long story short, we are pushing so hard for 2 hours, and my body is just starting to give out in different places. And my like lower back starting to give out. My neck is starting to give out. So there was at one point having like 4 people every time you have the contraction that you're supposed to push for about 10 seconds. There's 4 people lifting my body to get it into the right position to get the baby to push.
Oh man.
And so long story short, our OB has to leave. She has this one commitment every week. So our actual OB comes in and she takes one look at me. She has no idea who we are, which is a whole nother topic. And she goes, you have 30 minutes to push, and we were doing a C-section. And
whoa.
And I have to interject.
Okay.
So let's back up, because at like the 2 p.m. mark, and when Michelle said there was a shift change in the morning when we woke up, it was truly like a whole new just light was shining on the day. So positive. We had nurses that had been in Flagstaff forever, like a super hype, eager crew, and it just completely changed the day. And Michelle told everybody the birth plan is like, I want to deliver this baby vaginally. And the crew is just like, let's do it. We're going to get you there. It's going to be a lot of work, but we can do this. And so from 8 a.m. till 5, that was the plan. And Michelle was slowly getting there. But then to have that first OB come in and Michelle says, my plan is to get this baby out vaginally. She's like, all right, I think we can make this happen. I have a appointment from 5 to 6, but we'll see where you're at before I leave. And then I come back and we'll see where you're at again. So then I had never seen so much support in a room of like the whole staff, our doulas, me, but we're all like literally trying to get this common goal of getting this baby out through Michelle's vagina together. It was incredible. And when that other OB comes in, our OB that Michelle had seen like twice, she was like, oh, hey, good to see you. I don't know who you are. You have 30 minutes to get this baby out, or we're going to cut you open and we'll see you later.
Yeah.
And just leaves. The head nurse turns to us and she's like, I don't want to cuss, but she's like, screw that lady. We're getting this baby out vaginally. Let's do this. Yeah. Now we really have to like bear down and no pun intended, bear down.
Arizona.
But like, we can do this. Like, don't give up. Yeah. That was deflating. Get that out of your mind. And like the whole staff was just behind Michelle in support. It was incredible.
So Michelle, why did she come in guns blazing like so hard? What was her reasoning for being like, okay, you've got 30 minutes? Did she explain?
Yeah, well, if she explained, I
Not
didn't really
really.
hear it. But when I was talking to the doula afterwards, I think there's a couple major factors, right? One, I guess I was losing a lot of blood, so that was a big worry. My catheter had also slipped out, which is another data point later. And then also just the amount of time I'd been pushing, she just wasn't very optimistic that like the baby could make it through the birth canal. So I don't want to discredit her philosophy, her approach. It just was such a different tone and energy from 20 minutes before that. Right. And so it was, and I don't really know what happened, to be very honest, because you can't understand anything at the time, but like the OB who said the C-section thing never showed up again. And I'm pretty sure our nurse then our doula went outside to talk to her, and they like I don't exactly know. I think they advocated on her behalf on what to do. And so like, you know, again, I was happy if it went to C-section, I would have been happy. If it went to like, you know, if whatever it required for healthy baby, healthy mom. But, you know, I almost think people in the room wanted the vaginal birth more than I did at some points. But that OB never came back. But it was more the energy shift that was just such a deterrent than the news in some capacity.
How was Sierra doing through all this?
She was great.
She was like, that was the thing. We never had to worry about her heartbeat or herself. Like that was like the saving grace to got into the whole thing. And I think part of the reason ROB was willing to like allow the vaginal birth to happen, it was because like Sierra was doing really well across this whole board. So that was such a relief.
Good. But that wasn't obviously a factor then for the new doctor coming in saying,
right,
time's up.
Right.
Okay.
I mean,
good.
It was like 30 seconds. She walked in, looked at Michelle, and she's like, "All right, we'll see you in 30 minutes."
Yeah, it was such a weird, but you know, I know the story gets long, so it's just, you know, 5 p.m. rolls around, the OB, the young whippersnapper, whatever call her, she feisty one comes back in. She's like, her arms are rolled up. She's like, we're getting this baby out, and she. You know, I always hear people who say their OB was in the room with them for about 3 minutes to have the baby come out. She was in the room with us for a full hour.
2 hours maybe.
And so what we ended up doing is we ended up doing the vacuum. So that was an option to help pull her through the birth canal. So the thing is, you get the vacuum goes on the top of her head, and you get 3 times for the vacuum to help pull, and then it detaches. And on the 3rd time, you can't use the vacuum anymore, because they want to protect the baby's health, their head, all the above. So it's a bit of a scary technique, but at the same time, like it's, you know, a lot of times people use forceps and a lot of times whatever, but this was a really cool technique that they could try. And so we talked it out with their doula, and we ended up using the vacuum.
Was there audio with the vacuum? Were there noises? Does the explain to me a little bit more about the technical side of the vacuum?
Wild.
Yeah, I have no idea.
She comes in with a plunger, and she's just like, all right, we're cranking this thing up. There's like airflow or some suction regulation on it. And she's just like, this is how we're going to get her out. And I'm like, whoa, what is that? So here we go, 1, 2, 3. And then gets her out. And like, her leg wasn't like on the table, but she was pulling pretty freaking hard. And I'm like, oh, this can't be happening right now. This is like looks like a movie. And did it all 3 times.
Yeah.
And got her enough down the birth canal that it worked.
Yeah. And
wow. The picture I have in my head though is like Ghostbusters coming in with their machine.
It's exactly what I mean, it's wild. Dude.
Yeah.
But that's not real, right? You're kidding us. That's
right. So no, but I remember her like leg up and everything. It was wild. And we also had a birthing playlist that's like jamming. So it's just chaos in this room. Hype. It was chaos. Absolute chaos. And so sure enough, this vacuum technique got her far enough, but it was still about 20 minutes before Sierra was actually came out. So it was like, it was the most intense pushing of my life.
And this is when, I kid you not, like, I think all staff on the floor came in. There was like the OB, all the nurses in the birthing floor. Yeah. And then they had doctors for like ER nurses come in for Michelle, just in case. They had the pediatricians in there. So I think there were legitimately 15 people in there.
Wow.
Just for all bases covered, like Michelle's health, the baby's health.
Yeah.
They had somebody watching the doctor or the OB do the vacuum.
Yeah.
And at that point, it was like I played football. It was like a football locker room. Like, let's go, Michelle. You got this. Everyone's so hyped.
Did it make you nervous at all when all of those people came in there? Like, what was your thought process? Were you scared? Was it like an indicator that you may need that many people? Or was it like, we're the cheer squad?
I was going through a weird, I was starting to black out like pretty frequently in between contractions. Like, I have this visual of like, I think we went from like 4 people to 6 people on my back pushing me up and helping me through the last 20 minutes of pushing. The amount of times I heard, this is it, last push.
Yeah.
All you need to do is one more. 20 minutes of that was just like outrageous. And I started to be like, I'm not scared that they're in here, but I'm glad they're in here because like, I'm really worried about my own health at this point. Like, I remember having a visual of like, it sounds dramatic, but I was like, I might not get through this. Like, I was just so depleted of energy. I was like, how do I get through this moment of this much pain, this much force, and just like really just destroying my body in this sense, right? Like, so it was just like, I like the philosophy I have used a lot in birth, et cetera, is like the only way out is through. But like at that point I was like, the only way out is out. Like, it was just a really terrifying moment as I'm delivering her. So I'm glad they were in there, but it definitely was overwhelming.
Was there any point during that, and maybe it just, there was so much going on and you were, like you said, sort of in and out of consciousness that you didn't have any capacity to think about anything else, but was there ever a moment, and maybe Ryan, you can answer this, that you kind of were like, okay, maybe we should go to a C-section. Like, this is really hard on my body. How much more? I mean, I remember you telling me like you were passing out. Ryan, was it obvious to you that she was like kind of in and out of consciousness? Was it obvious to everybody else in the room?
Yes. But like, and I'll say this, like, I've never seen anything more courageous, heroic, like superhuman than Michelle pushing this baby out and like truly willing Sierra to come out vaginally for like what felt like hours. But in between pushes, I mean, she's white as a ghost. Like, looks like I felt like a boxing coach in the corner, like giving her Gatorade and like wiping down your face with a washcloth, and you're almost dead, and then coming back and like going again the next round. And it was just like the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life.
But Mickella, to your point, I was like, give me a C-section. Like, I can't do this any longer. Like, I was the vocalist one about it. And at that point, it was too late. Like, we had to deliver vaginally. And so maybe about like, say it was like this 30-minute period, 20-minute period of just like giving everything I had. But about 5 minutes before she was born, the doctor goes, I can see her hair. And I have this visual in my head of like, I can see her hair. And I was like, okay.
I just got goosebumps.
If her hair is there, that means her head's there. That means like she's there. Almost there. She's there. And so it was just like this crazy push. And she came at 6:59. So 26 hours from contractions until birth, 1 minute before shift change. So, everybody was going to leave for the day. Yeah. I hope they all got paid triple overtime because they definitely all had to stay longer than their shift change. And, and again, she was healthy. We got to do about 90 minutes of skin to skin in the golden hour. The other thing that like no one tells you, you have to deliver a baby, and then you also have to deliver the placenta. So at this point, apparently I'm losing so much blood that my OB just went in and took out the placenta, I guess. And so that helped speed up the process. I had a grade 2 tear, so I had to get stitched up from it all. And, I just have this last visual of the OB before she left was like, well, I don't need my workout for the day. Like that was her joke on her way out. Like it was just like that much work across the board for everybody to get Sierra out.
What? So you said a grade 2 tear. I take it that's pretty bad.
Yeah, I should pull up the actual one. So it's like they do a grade 1 through 4. Grade 4 is basically a tear from your vagina all the way to your anus.
Mm-hmm.
And it also talks about how deep the tear is, like skin and the muscle and different tissues that it goes in. So you can Google what a grade 2 tear was and the depth of it. So wasn't the worst, but it wasn't the best.
It's a tear. A tear is bad.
Yeah.
The scariest part was how much blood Michelle lost, and there was like a few nurses who were, I think, ready to call it because of blood.
Yeah.
You didn't have to get a transfusion, did you?
No, probably would have been.
It was close, dude.
Yeah. No, but.
Could you feel the tear, or was the epidural still somewhat working?
Oh, my epidural was not working at all through any of this like last phase. I could feel everything. Like I could feel every contraction. I could feel every push. I could feel, they call it the ring of fire. Like, so yes, I got an epidural. It helped me get sleep. But at the same time, like it really didn't help me with much pain management at all, especially at the end. I don't know if it was because it started wearing out or whatever, but like, ironically though, like after going through that, the stitches were nothing. I was like, whatever, like it's fine. I have the baby on me. Like it is what it is, but it was interesting.
Wait, did they stitch you up while you had Sierra on you?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they removed the placenta and then stitched you up while you were holding Sierra.
Mm-hmm.
So when the tear happened, was this like throughout the whole delivery process, or was it like as she was coming out? Do you know?
I think most of it happens like as she's coming out. And I think the extra pressure on it, because it's like really when the hole is getting too big and that's where it starts, really tearing. So, and that's, I mean, if anyone wants to Google over there, what percentage of women who deliver vaginally actually have a tear? But I think it's close to like 70%.
Wow. I didn't know it was that high.
Did you do any perineal massage before you went into labor?
Yes.
Ryan, did you do any perineal massage?
You're going to talk about that the other day. Yes, I participated.
You guys can Google perineal massage.
It's a blast.
Yeah.
We're a lot closer now.
So yes, but I do want to talk a little bit before, ending the birth story, but about what happened afterwards. But I just wanted to end the birth story with this line I wrote down about you, Ryan, that I thought was really cool. And I said, I had the whole team pushing my body, and in between each contraction, your dad, Ryan, was there feeding me water, honey, and giving me the best pep talks. I don't know if I've ever been more in love with your dad. He was everything I needed. So just the power of having the right team in the room is just, whoever that team is for you is just so important. And you're everything I needed. So baby comes, all's good. I'm just depleted emotionally. And then all of a sudden you're like, great, you have a human to take care of. So you got to start breastfeeding, and you have to start like going through this whole process and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And try to get some sleep because you need rest because you haven't slept in like 48 hours, whatever. And so lactation consultants come in, like we're able to get some sort of latch, which is good. I'm trying to go to sleep. And then, and one of the nice things that happened with the doula before we got to bed was she helped me take a shower and kind of get changed. My mom and my dad and my brother came into the room, which was really nice. They had to do a whole like crime scene cleanup of our room. They actually replaced your bed with a Tempur-Pedic mattress, and like TMI, but like we were finding blood for 2 days in this room. It was disgusting. Like there was so much everywhere. But anyways, they clean up the room, and all of a sudden you're like, now it feels like a hotel again. This was a wild, switch of energy in the last 2 hours, but here we are. And so with the baby, we finally get her down to sleep. The first night's actually, they say, is pretty easy. The second night's kind of more complicated. But I remember I needed to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. And I stood up out of the bed, and I don't know how I got up by myself. I just figured I could. And all of a sudden, my entire bladder released. I had zero control of my bladder. So all of a sudden I'm standing, I had like my little slippers on and just like my whole feet worth. It was a really dehumanizing moment at that point. Right. And
Did they tell you that that was a potential side effect or consequence of?
after the fact, like, oh, that's pretty common, right? So, the poor nurse ended up becoming, in hospitality or in like the cleaning crew to come in to clean that up. And, I think a lot of it was because my catheter had slipped. So that had caused some issues. And then, basically for the last 6 hours of that pushing, I just tore up my pelvic floor. Like all my muscles had really given away at that point. So like just the simple being able to hold your pee is a pelvic floor workout that needs to actually happen. And so it's something I don't take for granted anymore. So that happened, and that was kind of a challenging thing to get through the night. And then the next morning, it's at 7 a.m., I was woken by the anesthesiologist. And I was like, hey, why am I seeing you again here? And he goes, so I hear you're going to be a good candidate for spinal headaches. And I was like, all right, I don't know what those are, but I feel okay right now. And he's like, can you do me a favor and sit up? So the thing about spinal headaches is when you're laying down, it's fine. But when you stand up, sit up, like it just feels like you're like the worst headache you've ever had. It is just crashes into your brain. And sure enough, like I was just like hit with the worst headache ever. And I was like, whoa, what the heck just happened?
What made you a good candidate for the spinal headaches?
Yeah. And the biggest thing
she
was
got stabbed like 5 times.
So that's what it was.
Yeah, it was the epidural that didn't go in correctly. And I think, and the time I had it. A lot of people have epidurals for 2 to 3 hours. I had it for 7, right? So it was a very long duration of having it and then having to get topped up too. So I think it was the combination of all those things made me all-star candidate for this spinal headaches. And here's the thing about spinal headaches. He's like, here's where I'm at. You can try caffeine. He's like, you can try it. Some people it helps. It's not going to help. But the challenging thing is this can either last a couple days or more commonly, it's going to last a couple months, like months, right? Like we're talking trying to raise a newborn and having these headaches for months. And so I was like, don't want to like go through this like, I didn't want to take more medicine at this point or whatever. So he's like, the good news is we have a fix and it's called a blood patch. So what we can do is basically giving you we're going to take blood from your arm and give you another epidural and close up your spinal column with more of your blood. And at that point, I'm like, I don't want anyone touching my back again. I want to get through this naturally. I don't want to go through it, anything like that. So, that was my day. I hadn't had much caffeine during pregnancy. I was drinking all the caffeine, chocolate, trying to like get this headache to go away, laying down when I could. But by about 6 p.m. that night, like I already couldn't take it. And I was just like, I'm in the hospital right now. Like I might as well go through this process. And, we were doing a lot of research on like Mayo Clinic and talking to some other people. And we ultimately were like, this is the right decision for us. So ended up getting a blood patch that night with a new anesthesiologist who was fantastic. And it was the most miraculous medical treatment I've ever witnessed to be part of my life. Like, well, I guess I just gave birth, but like still it was, talk about more medical, right? Like he goes, as soon as your head stops hurting and your back starts hurting, that's when we're done. And it took about like 3 pumps of my blood into my back and my headache disappeared. Like it vanished. It was the most wild experience of my life. And then my back was in so much pain, like in the exact same second. So they want you, it happened and we kind of had that. So he's like, but we want you to stay on your back for at least 2 hours, if not as long as possible. So that became a night where like I really had to rely on Ryan and the nurses. And I luckily had that colostrum I had talked about to feed Sierra in the middle of the night. So I basically laid on my back as flat as possible for about maybe 4 to 6 hours to really get myself some rest and to make sure the blood patch had healed. And anyways, and then they ended up being big help on feeding Sierra that night and then also being able to help with her. So it was a wild night, and we ended up the next morning we got her test, did the final test, and I was finally feeling better enough to like start moving for the first time in 2 days. I could barely walk. Like I should have been given a wheelchair probably. But the pediatrician came in and was also like, did a final test and like, your baby's a bit jaundiced. And so we need to get her on a Billy blanket, as they call it. And so we got sent home with that. I think the other thing is just like wild how many people come into your room after birth is like the state comes in, doctors come in for you, for them, for lactation consultants, the hearing like you have this person that's already having you fill out your birth certificate. It's just amazing how many people are coming in and out of your room in this whole point.
Well, and what's funny about that too is that they're like, okay, you guys need to get some rest, but we're going to be here every 15 minutes poking and prodding and making sure that we get all this information from you.
Yeah, exactly. It was wild. So it was wild. And I just like, as I mentioned, like or like people are like, pack your makeup, pack cute outfits. I was in a robe the entire time because I'm peeing every time I stand up, and my ankles were as big as my thighs. They were huge. I could barely walk, could barely get out of bed. Like, so I and it was cold outside. So I had like my one pair of sweatpants that I could fit around my ankles to get out of the hospital. So it's just it was a wild journey.
That's intense.
I mean, it was for first time parent, like witnessing that. I had friends who had kids, but I've never heard the stories, right? Maybe Lisa, you're the closest to me that we talked about like having a baby. Just so many emotions, and like watching my partner just go through the toughest thing that life can like give you, and she made it through in just heroic fashion, and just so many emotions the whole time of just anxiety and nervousness and just being absolutely terrified. And then you come out the other side and it's like the most remarkable, just positive, like phenomenal just happening in life. And it's like, wow, this is kind of like that miracle that people talk about.
The dichotomy of it.
All the things, like all the feels
yes.
in one day.
You talk about that, right? And Michelle, you went through a lot. You guys went through a lot to get Sierra here for happy, healthy baby and mom. Having Sierra, being a year out from that now, how often do you think about your birth and what that process was like to get her here?
Every time I sneeze, every time I cough. No, I think about it a lot, and I'm thinking about it a lot now, being pregnant again and figuring out, wow, in 22 weeks, I have to do this all again, right? And how is my plan going to be different? How is it going to change? I've been talking with my OB quite a bit about it, and she's like, use me as a therapist, etc. Talk through it. She's like, I can do everything but guarantee, but your birth will be easier. You're going to be giving Sierra the biggest hug after the second birth because of the path she cleared to get baby number 2 out, right? And so, it's crazy. I'm like sitting here being like, do I just is there an easy route I asked her, I was like, should I just get a C-section and just, do it that second time? Or do I, go through labor again? And she's really adamant that I go through labor again, through vaginal delivery again. And so I have my own therapist. I have the OB talking through it. And so like, I do find myself wanting to do it again. Like, and it sounds so crazy to say that, but like, I'm definitely leaning and will try to do another vaginal birth. Who knows what'll happen this time around. And I don't know why I'm feeling that way or saying that out loud because of how intense it was. But like, it's just, there's something continuing to compel me that direction to be like, let's do it. Let's make it happen. I'm very anxious about the birth again, but I'm excited for the aftermath.
It's that birthing amnesia. That's why
I know
people.
It is.
Yeah, you got to forget about it so you'll do it again. Yeah.
I didn't forget.
Yeah. No. I had a question for you, Ryan. So when you first saw Cece come out, what was your first thought?
My first thought was it looked like an alien. And she was not cute, which is stuff all over her. I didn't know what to expect, but I didn't expect that. And like in the movies, again, it's like, oh, they come out and it's like, oh, wah, what a cute baby. It was like, she's like, what, just like holding, like dangling the baby, and she like didn't really cry at first, and it was mucusy, like you know the movie Alien, where they like the alien like pops out of the alien. It looked like that,
Yeah.
and then they finally cleaned her off, and she started crying, and it was like, oh my god, this is pretty cool.
I wasn't expecting that answer. I'm like crying.
Actually, kind of crazy. At the beginning, when we first brought our OB in, she actually offered to Ryan, "Do you want to catch the baby?" She's like, most men say no, but Ryan's
I was
like,
fully ready.
he was ready
be down there
to take her out of me. Like she's like, I will let you do this if you want it. And so that was the whole plan. Did not go that way, which is also fine. But it's just wild. So you get to
putting those football skills. So
Yeah.
Well, I asked to bring my baseball glove and to do like a really mad question. She's like, "Don't ever ask that again." So I did not bring my baseball glove.
Thank you for bringing that humor.
Lisa, are you okay? Can you talk to us? Should we pause the recording?
Sorry. I don't get emotional about other people's stories, but for some, I'm sorry. Ooh, okay, breathe.
And that's where we're going to stop today for Mom Jeans, trying to fit into motherhood. Please come back next week to listen to the rest of this episode. If you haven't already, please follow us on our socials at Mom Jeans the podcast. And if you have any questions or want to write us your birth stories or have any comments, please email us at hello@momjeansthepodcast.com. Please remember that this podcast is only for entertainment and we are not doctors. So if you have any questions, always talk to your doctor or your pediatrician. Thank you and see you next week.